All right, we're at the end of the drill season now, and so this is a perfect time to talk about today's topic. This is something that you can start doing now, or at least start organizing now. And that way, when you do get back to the drill season, you'll be ready to go. You'll have an idea. And what we're going to be talking about here today is organizing your team, setting your team up in a way that's going to set y'all up for success. Now, when we talk about this, we're really talking about taking the larger group and then breaking it down into sub teams, smaller groups to help us achieve the goal. And so let's just dive right in. So the first question is why? Why in the world would we want to do this in such a way that's going to seem to create a little bit more of an organizational challenge for us? It's going to require a little bit more wrangling, going to be a little bit more uncomfortable when we start. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, there are way too many moving pieces on even a basically competitive drill team. Think about it. You have uniforms and you have equipment and you have checklists and you have itineraries and you have practices and you have performances and drill meets and packing lists. There's so much going on for a competitive drill team. And not to mention the fact that we have regulation, exhibition, color guard, inspection. Maybe we have different uniform sets for each one of those things that we're doing, or maybe that's something that we want to move to. There are just so many moving pieces on a drill team that expecting individual cadets to organize themselves as a leadership exercise and take charge and do everything individually is kind of a recipe for absolute chaos at the worst. And it's a recipe for extreme frustration on the part of the instructor at best. And so, what we recommend is we want to bring order to that chaos, right? We want to give this team a little bit of form, and it's going to really, really smooth the process out for you. Two, this is going to involve more cadets on the team in a more meaningful way, more quickly than just participating on the drill floor. And so, when we start to talk about this, we have to imagine that every drill team cadet maybe has a couple of jobs. One of those jobs is to perform whatever events they happen to be in, regulation, color guard, whatever. And the other job that they have on the team is to become part of this organizational process, to join this sub team where they're going to have a smaller community of individuals who are specializing in what happens. Now, we know that this works because almost all of our cadet corps are set up in kind of a similar fashion. And yet the drill team seems like the smallest common denominator or the least common denominator, when in reality, we can break that fraction down one step further. But the really, I think the best benefit of breaking the team down into sub teams is that we have an opportunity to get people ingrained in the team, to build those relationships, to build that camaraderie. To steal a phrase, we can do that in circles rather than in rows. And so, if you think about the drill team as a whole, even if you have a small team, it's a fairly intimidating place for a new person to go. It's kind of like walking in and having to learn a brand new skill, a brand new language, a brand new set of expectations. And so getting new team members involved in a specialty right from the get-go is going to create that feeling of community, which hopefully means that because they're gainfully employed doing something for the team right away instead of waiting until they ascend into a leadership position. Hopefully we're building that relationship, we're building that community such that those people stick around. And so we really want to use this as a team building mechanism as much as it is an organizational tool, as much as it is something to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of margin or space in our meet or practice prep. This is something that can really help grow our teams. So we're going to talk about a couple of different sub teams, sub communities within a drill team that we think every drill team should have. And we're going to talk a little bit about what they do and why they are important. And we'll start with a really obvious one, right? So the first one that we're going to talk about, super duper obvious, whether you're an armed team or an unarmed team, right? There's going to be gear and equipment. We're not talking about uniforms yet. We're just talking about things like color guard equipment or drill rifles, obviously for an armed drill team. And so we should have a sub team responsible for managing the equipment. These cadets are going to maintain all that equipment and know how to perform the upkeep on it, be it color guard, stabs, and knowing exactly what stuff to use to connect the two halves of the flag staff so they don't come apart in competition. definitely knowing the ins and outs of all the drill rifles and knowing how to perform repairs and what tools and what equipment you need to work on those. They're also going to be the ones responsible for cleaning up, organizing, tidying up any supply or armory type areas that you have. They should be the ones that are consistently back there working and making sure that everyone knows who goes in there, where to find whatever it is they're looking for. Maybe they're even the ones managing, making sure that not everyone is going in and looking for everything. They're the ones who can create the records and document records. And if we're assigning rifles, making sure that every cadet knows their serial number and where it goes in the rack, or how we're going to organize those rifles, whatever. All that documentation to include keeping a list of stuff that might be needed for the upkeep of the equipment, bringing that to the instructors and letting them know, hey, we're getting a little bit low on electrical tape, or we're getting a little bit low on this, or we need this particular tool. Having the ability to look at these spare parts and the tools and knowing what's on hand, and then making sure that they're the ones who are responsible for packing out all the stuff that you need when you go to compete, right? There's nothing worse than getting to a competition and not having a flathead screwdriver where you need one, or not having an Allen wrench the size that you need. And so having a team of people whose sole brain space kind of focuses on that is going to help us be successful when we go to travel and when we need to move this gear from place to place. These are also the ones that are assisting team members. Rifle breaks or a screw comes loose. They're the ones who can very quickly hop in and help their teammates deal with those issues on site. And again, going back to the community aspect, if you bring new folks in right away, it really is empowering for them to be able to be like, hey, I can help with that, or I can help fix this issue that you're dealing with. They're a brand new member, but they have some sort of expertise and some sort of value that they're bringing to the team very early on. And we saw this happen with the group that we're working with regularly. Really, really cool to have a freshman or a new member step up and say, yeah, I can take care of that. Pass the rifle over here. Let me get that done. And in 30 seconds, rifle's operable again, back out on the drill pad and rolling. So one of the easiest things, and again, we all know this because we have cadets assigned to supply, however you guys deal with that in your particular program, there's always someone that's assigned to the equipment. So let's do that for drill team as well. So that's a really, really easy one. Next one we're going to talk about, and this is sometimes controversial, we found less so as we go on. We want to have cadets specifically assigned to the uniforms. Now, that doesn't mean that these are the only cadets that are ever going to touch the uniforms or ever going to work on them. But having cadets, especially really organized, meticulous, very detail-oriented ones assigned to the uniforms, can be a game changer. And if you think about it, the judges are going to see you in your uniform before you do any drill. Before you do anything, they're going to have formed that first impression based on what you look like. They're going to give it that up and down and say, yep, those people look like they're squared away, or hey, those people look like they did an adequate job, or hey, it looks like three people forgot important things in their uniforms and they just kind of showed up here. So having cadets assigned to the uniform team who are very, very much responsible for organizing these efforts is huge, has tons of value for the competition aspect, and also I think for the frustration and the logistical aspect of it. These are the cadets who are going to organize all the uniform stuff. They're the ones who are going to make sure that the sizings and the fittings, they're helping out with that, because that may be different than the uniform that they wear. Hopefully you're working towards it being different than the uniform they wear for their everyday or every week uniform wear. They're the ones that are involved in making sure that everyone's got the required items, that everything's been issued the way that it needs to be issued. They're also responsible for maintaining the records of that stuff and making sure that there is documentation on who has what. Not only that, but where it's stored and how, the manner in which it's stored. And we could talk for hours about tips and tricks on that front, which we won't do now, but they're the ones who are responsible for that process. The other thing that they're doing, they may be the ones that are responsible for the uniforms, but the entire drill team can be responsible for some portion of the uniform. Now, drill team activity, not an individual activity. You don't get extra points when the seniors' uniform looks amazing, but the freshmen really learned responsibility by showing up, and even though they didn't have their ribbon rack on the right side, and they really learned through experience. It doesn't work like that. The team succeeds together. team fails together. And so what the uniform team can do is come in and divide the drill team up between male and female uniforms. And then instead of by uniform, like you work on your own stuff and you work on your own stuff and you do all your ribbons and name tag and awards and decks and cords and shoes, they can split the team up by item. And so we have some cadets that are working on ribbons for all the male uniforms, name tags for all the female uniforms, cords for all the uniforms, lacing all the shoes, edge dressing all the shoes. And so in this way, the uniform team steps in, organizes the efforts of the rest of the drill team, and we're really working on the uniforms as one whole group, not as a bunch of individuals who hopefully your eighth of an inch matches your eighth of an inch and we come out good and the commander does a double check and the instructor does a triple check and we're going to call that good. This is a really, really important part of building a cohesive team competition, because I think, and after doing this for a long time, if the uniforms are an individual effort, the message that gets sent is, if I do my part, that's the most important thing. But in reality, we all need to do our part. And so the uniform team coming in and splitting things up by item on the uniform and overseeing that process can be huge, right? They're also going to be the ones that are organizing the dressing process when you get to the drill meets. And again, that's another topic that we could talk for hours about. We won't, but they're the ones that are really on the ground. And you can see in the picture here behind, there's that blue sheet. This happens to be a Marine Corps team. They're wearing blue trousers. And so the lint coming off of the sheet is going to match the color of the trousers. Therefore, we're not attracting a whole lot of dust and fuzz. And so the uniform team is the ones that kind of make sure that that stuff is packed, that stuff is ready to go, and that everyone on the team knows the basic process. So again, an obvious one, lots involved. This is just kind of a cursory overview of it. But having a uniform team built out of your drill team, super important. This one is a fun one. This one is, I think, kind of a catch-all for the most important things that often get assigned to the least important people, quote unquote. And this is the logistics team. This was kind of born of necessity when we were working with a group that needed some organization. And it turned out to be maybe one of the most successful things that we've ever recommended. The logistics team is there to fill in the gaps. They are an organizational and muscle component of the drill team. And so it's kind of the catch-all for anything that needs organization and anything that requires movement of stuff, whether it's equipment to and from practice or loading and offloading for the meet. This is kind of their responsibility. So what do? They're going to oversee all the practice and the meet organization of stuff, right? And they're going to bring the required items needed out to practice, making sure that the medical bag gets out to practice and the cones and the measuring tape go out and all that kind of good stuff. They're actually going to set up the drill areas. And I think we found in a lot of teams, one of two things is true. It's either the freshmen set the drill areas because it's kind of grunt work, right? Or we're not setting drill areas at all. Well, if we're not setting areas at all, that ain't great. And if we're using our least experienced people to do one of the most important jobs, that probably isn't great either. So having logistics people who are detail oriented, who don't mind doing some heavy lifting. It's one of those things like you read a job description and it says you have to be able to lift X, Y, and Z. This might be one of those things because they're going to be doing a lot of physical type labor for the team. So having a team that sets up the drill areas, creating the plans for loading into and loading out of a meet, right? It doesn't matter how well you drill. If when you get off the bus, it looks like a disorganized mess and the judges coming in that morning for the briefing, sipping their coffee, look over and see, oh my goodness, they look really, really crazy. And then all of a sudden, 2 hours later, they're standing in front of them reporting in. Having that great first impression, having a team to manage that can be a game changer for you. They're going to be also the ones, again, like the uniform team, everyone's going to be involved in the moving and staging of gear going to a meet, for example. They're going to be the ones that assign the team members out to what specifically they will be helping with, because there's nothing worse than going to a meet and seeing the commander yelling 5 different sets of instructions to 12 different people who may or may not be paying attention, and 3 people are trying to grab the same rifle case. Having a team to step in and really organize that process. Hey, you're going to be responsible for this this, and this. You're going to come back. You're going to do this, this, and this. That's going to be huge. The other thing that this team can do, which is really, really neat, and again, we told this group, be organized, have a little bit of a system of doing things so it doesn't look like chaos. And we actually learned this from this particular group. They went out and they reconned the event site, and they found out how big the changing area that was assigned to the team was going to be. And then you can see here in the corner, they started to create like keyed maps about how to set up that changing room for the team. And so everything has a place. It's all divided. And the weirdest thing was, this was a little bit ago, we walked into the ROTC room of this team, and they'd set up the ROTC room in kind of a mock fashion of what they were going to set up at the drill meet for their changing area. And so they tried different configurations, and they played around with what fits best here and how much space does this create. And they were really able to get hands-on and take this into kind of their own hands and get really, really organized. And it kind of grew legs and started to run from there. And this particular team is probably one of the best things we can recommend, because it gives organized cadets the chance to use the skills that they already have. In particular, the cadet that was doing all the mapping out had, a gaming background, tabletop gaming background. So of course they were organized. Of course they were good with maps and keys and all that kind of stuff. And it really let them take that talent and bring it to the team. So when we talk about building community and building involvement, this is one of those areas where if you have cadets who are very, once again, kind of logistically oriented, this could be a great place for them to thrive. So this is one of those teams that's kind of the catch-all or the fill-in for everything that needs to happen with gear and with that kind of organizational element. There are a lot of deadlines on Drill Team. There are a lot of things to remember. There are a lot of dates to remember. There are a lot of we need to remember to do this by this time, bring in this form by this time, turn in this money by this time. And I think that high school is hard enough without expecting every single small detail to be managed at the lowest level on the team. And so creating out of your core of returning members, the most consistently responsible ones, creating an accountability team is one of those game-changing elements where you will stop having to worry about deadlines, because the team will start to help the team worry about them instead. And so all you do here, very, very simple, is take a handful of your most responsible cadets, the ones who know what's going on, and even the ones who might be struggling. You may find that when they're responsible for people, magically they become more responsible, right? And then we divide the other team members out amongst those folks and do it strategically, right? Make small groups that make sense, right, between all the people you have assigned as accountability leaders. And the accountability team's job is to go to their small group of assigned people and check in. If a form is due on Friday, the accountability team should go out on Wednesday and say, hey, do you have it set aside? Have you talked to your parents to get it signed? Okay. In our communications platform, let's have everyone throw a picture up of it sitting in their folder, in their backpack, so that we know that on Thursday it's sitting there. So on Friday, when you bring it in, it's already there and taken care of. The accountability team has that big brother, big sister kind of an element where they're taking care of the subordinate team members and making sure that they don't miss stuff that might otherwise fall through the cracks. Again, talking story, there were a lot of issues with this group that we were working with, people forgetting things or not being accountable or not having responsibility. It became very frustrating once this was implemented, and once we had folks checking in regularly and creating those guardrails, right? Don't wait until Friday for the thing that's due on Friday. Let's start checking in on Wednesday. Let's start checking in on Tuesday. Creating those guardrails, magically, we don't have issues bringing stuff in anymore with the young ones because someone's checking in on them. And as that's happening, a couple of things. One, someone cares about that person enough to be consistently checking in and making sure something's going on. That builds community on the team. Two, it's teaching people how to be responsible and how the team culture of responsibility and accountability works. It's helping them understand what that's like so that they can become that person for someone else later on. And if you work together on this, it sounds a lot like hand holding. It sounds a little bit silly for high schoolers maybe, but it's one of those things that the people who don't need the help remembering things are great people to help others. And the ones who do were not probably going to figure it out on their own. This gives them some scaffolding to stand on as they get better and better at this skill. And so this is a really important team that you could consider making a sub team for your drill team program. The last two that we're going to talk about very briefly are pretty simple. Coordination and organization. There are tons of lists. There are tons of checklists and packing lists and organizational stuff that has to happen. And having a couple of dedicated cadets who are really organized. And again, this lets you find the cadets and use their strengths. If you have someone that's got a planner that's super meticulous, that never misses anything, they sound like a perfect candidate for this because they're going to coordinate with the other teams. When the uniform team needs a checklist, they're going to produce it. So if you have cadets that are technically inclined, you can see here in the background, we have a Google Doc up here of what's going to happen. Apparently getting onto the bus. Males are going to enter first by rank, gear in the cubby or under feet, volume is low. They're going to be putting all this stuff in writing and disseminating it out to the team, making sure that all the sub teams are unified, making sure that the entire drill team knows what's happening. They're really the ones that are putting this stuff to writing and then pushing it to the team. So this is a great job, especially for maybe your older or more experienced cadets, because this is a great, strong life skill in general. And so having a team who's just responsible for lists and organization and pushing that stuff out is a huge, huge asset. And though we're not going to talk about it in this particular presentation, you should have some sort of team communication platform. We recommend Discord. We'll talk about that again for hours, but we won't. But if you have an electronic platform where you're formally organizing the drill team, and you absolutely should, you should probably have a team of people who are responsible for working with the instructors who are on that platform to create, administrate, moderate, do all the stuff that's required to maintain that platform, to adapt it to the needs of the team, and that sort of thing. And so oftentimes your tech savvy people, again, we always recommend Discord. In every school that we go to and teach, we always ask the room, hey, how many of you use Discord? Okay, that's like half to 3/4 of the room. Of those people, how many have moderated or admin a Discord server? And there's always at least one. And so because of that, this is another great way to leverage people's existing abilities. If they have technical expertise, they can work directly with the instructor or instructors to make sure that the platform is set up and that the instructors and the adults really also understand what's going on so that they can effectively oversee and monitor and look through that kind of stuff. And so having a comms team just as kind of an admin group for your electronics platform, that is a super way to get cadets involved as well. This list that we just went through isn't exhaustive. I'm sure there are more things. A lot of this came up because there was a need. And don't be afraid to see a need and create a team to address that need. And if the team as a whole outgrows it, then that's great. But if it works for them, that's one more way for cadets to be involved meaningfully very early on. Generally speaking, we would say of your returning members, organize them first. Who are these teams going to be comprised of? Who is going to lead them? And then after you get your new people in, give it a week or 2 weeks, however, see who's sticking around and who's going to be a part of the team. Once they make it past the initial interest phase and, hey, I think I could do this, immediately try to get them involved because it's so much less intimidating when you're talking to somebody in a small group and now you have a mission that you've just been given that's unrelated to how good you are at drill because you're still learning that. You can come in and immediately start to help organizing whatever you're assigned to. That's going to be a huge factor in retention. So getting people involved early on is definitely important as well. Obviously, if you have any more questions, hit us up online, drill-dynamics.com. If you're seeing this on Drillpedia, that's great. You're already a member. If you're seeing this somewhere else, definitely consider heading on over to drillpedia.net. All the things that we talked about, we have videos, articles, instructional stuff, everything that we know about Drill Team that's been vetted and that we've used goes to Drillpedia for the benefit of the whole activity. So if you haven't thought about becoming a subscriber, head over to drillpedia.net and check that out. Be sure to check us out on social media, Drill Team Dynamics on Instagram. Find us on YouTube as well. Maybe you're seeing this there. And definitely let us know. We love to answer questions. We love to help as many folks as we can succeed. And if you're an instructor watching this and you might be interested in bringing our team to you, one of the best investments you can make for the long-term future of your drill team program is really investing in the knowledge you can give your cadets and the experience of working with people for whom this is a large part of their lives. For us, this is what we do professionally. Investing in your cadets with on-site training or other types of experiences. If you're an instructor and that sounds interesting to you, definitely check us out online as well at drill-dynamics.com. Thank you so much for stopping in. I hope this was helpful, kind of a brief overview. If you have any questions, either get in touch with us somewhere online or leave a question in the comments, and we'd be happy to help you out. But hopefully this was informative and something that you can start doing right now to make your team more organized.